Shalom everyone and welcome to the series Baruch in Hebrew. My name is Abigail. We continue with the series entitled Flee Babel. And today we'll specifically be looking at, with the teaching that I've provided earlier on, that the judgment that Abram happened, it being thrown into the fire, and Haran. So then today we'll be looking at Terach and Abram fleeing Babel. What happened? What led to Abram and Terach, his father, to flee Babel? And we read this from the book of Yahuah, otherwise known as Joshua, from chapter 12. Yahuah, chapter 12, from verse 45 to 68. And we read, "And at the expiration of 2 years from Abram's going out of the fire, that is in the 52nd year of his life, behold, King Nimrod sat in Babel upon the throne, and the king fell asleep and dreamt that he was standing with his troops and host, and in a valley opposite the king's furnace. And he lifted up his eyes and saw a man in the likeness of Abram coming forth from the furnace, and that he came and stood before the king with his drawn sword, and then sprang to the king with his sword. When the king fled from the man, for he was afraid, and while he was running, the man threw an egg upon the king's head, and the egg became a greater river. And the king dreamed that all his troops sank in that river and died. And the king took flight with 3 men who were before him, and he escaped. And the king looked at these men, and they were clothed in princely dresses as the garments of kings, and had the appearance and majesty of kings. And while they were running, the river again turned to an egg before the king. And there came forth from the egg a young bird, which came before the king, and flew at the head and plucked out the king's eye. And the king was grieved at the sight, and he awoke out of his sleep, and his ruach was agitated, and he felt a great terror. And in the morning the king rose from his couch in fear, and ordered all the wise men and magicians to come before him. When the king related the dream to him, and a wise servant of the king, whose name was Anuak, answered the king, saying, This is nothing else but the evil of Abram and his seed, which will spring up against my Adon and king in the latter days. And behold, the day will come when Abram and his seed and the children of his household will war with my king, and they will smite all the king's host." Just a second. "They will smite all the king's host and troops, and as to what you have said concerning 3 men which you did see, like unto yourself, and which did escape, this means that only you will escape with the 3 kings from the kings of the earth, who will be with you in battle. And that which you saw of the river, which turned to an egg at first, and the young bird plucking out your eye, this means nothing else but the seed of Abram, which will slay the king in latter days. This is my king's dream, and this is the interpretation, and the dream is true, and the interpretation which your servant has given you is right. Now therefore, my king, surely you know that it is now 52 years since your sages saw this at the birth of Abram. And if my king will suffer Abram to live in the earth, it will be to the injury of my Adon and king. For all the days that Abram lives, neither you nor your kingdom will be established, for this was known formerly at his birth. And why will not my king slay him, that his evil may be kept from you in latter days?" And Nimrod hearkened to the voice of Anuku, and he sent some of his servants in secret to go and seize Abram and bring him before the king had advised. and bring him before the king, as the king had advised. And what the king had said caused Abram's death, would cause Abram's death. And Eliezer said to Abram, Hasten, I skipped one line, sorry. And Nimrod hearkened to the voice of Anuku, and he sent some of his servants in secret to go and seize Abram and bring him before the king to suffer death. And Eliezer, Abram's servant, whom the king had given him, Nimrod had given Abram a servant, and the name of this servant is Eliezer, the very same Eliezer. Remember way down the line that Abram says that I don't have an heir, the only heir that I have is Eliezer, so if I die, is the one who will take my inheritance, which Yahuah said, no, Eliezer will not take your inheritance. The son that you will bear with your wife Sarah is the one who will inherit your possession. This is the same Eliezer that we later learned of, who was the servant, a very trusted servant of Abram. So Eliezer then sent forth Abram's servant, whom the king had given him, was at the time in the presence of the king when this declaration concerning his death was made, as suggested by Anuku, that Abram should suffer death. And Eliezer's Abram's servant, and Eliezer said to Abram, Hasten, rise up and save your soul, that you may not die through the hands of the king, for thus did he see in a dream concerning you, and thus did Anuku interpret it, and thus also did Anuku advise the king concerning you. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Eliezer, and Abram hastened and ran for safety to the house of Noah and his son Shem, and he concealed himself there and found a place of safety. And the king's servants came to Abram's house to seek him, but they could not find him. And they searched throughout the country, he was not to be found. And they went and searched in every direction, and he was not to be met with. And when the king's servant could not find Abram, they returned to the king, but the king's anger against Abram was stilled, as they did not find him. And the king drove from his mind this matter concerning Abram. And Abram was concealed in Noah's house for 1 month, until the king had forgotten this matter. But Abram was still afraid of the king. And Terach came to see Abram, his son, secretly in the house of Noah. And Terach was very great in the eyes of the king. And Abram said to his father, do you not know that the king thinks to slay me and to annihilate my name from the earth by the advice of the wicked counselors? Now whom have you here? What have you in this land? Arise, let us go together to the land of Canaan, that we may be delivered from his hand, lest you perish also through him in the latter days. Terach hearkened to the voice of his son Abram, and did all that Abram said to him. For what Abram said was from Yahuah, that the king should not kill Abram. They left for Canaan. When they came as far as the land of Haran, they remained there, for it was exceedingly good land for pasture and for sufficient extent for those who were with them. So when they fled the Ur of Chaldeans, Abram is advising his father Terach to say, listen, the word is out that I must be killed. Anuku has advised Nimrod, King Nimrod, that I must be killed because of the dream that the king had. And why would you think that the king would spare you if I am killed? You will also, because you are my father, and in fact you are the one that deceived him even in the first place. You have nothing anyway to hold on to here in Chaldeans. Let us go to Canaan. So then Terach listened to Abram's advice. So when they left, when they fled the Ur of Chaldeans, they were running to Canaan. So their destination was Canaan, which so happened, as we're going to go later and understand, that Canaan was the promised land, the land that was promised to Abraham and his seed. That's where they were running to. But they stopped in Haran. And the reason why they stopped in Haran was that the land of Haran, it says that when they came as far as the land of Haran, they remained there, for it was exceedingly good land for pasture and sufficient extent for those that were there. So it was good for pasture, it was enough land. This is then the Haran that Yahuah meets Abram in, because in any case, the destination for Abram when they were fleeing Babel, it was to go to Canaan. They just stopped in Haran because the land was great for pasture, but their destination, their original destination, was Canaan. And that's why then when Yahuah appeared himself to Abram, I think it was they dwelt in Haran for 25 years, and then he said, leave this place and your household and your family, and go to the land that I have promised you, the land flowing with milk and honey, which was Canaan. And Abram then obeyed the voice of Yahuah. He then only took Lot, and he took obviously his servant Eliezer and other servants and all the the wealth position that he had, and then he followed Yahuah, who was leading him to the promised land, being Canaan. And later Abram's father Terach actually died in Haran. So this is now we get to understand, which fast forward from the book of Genesis, from the book of Parashit, when we hear Yahuah speak to Abram saying, leave the land of Haran to the place in the land that I will show you. Now we understand how did they get to the land of Haran. They were fleeing for their lives, Babel. And it is the same call, the same instruction that is echoing, that you are still echoing in our times. And he's saying, flee Babel, come to the land that I have promised you, the land flowing with milk and honey. Come to this land that I have promised your forefathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob. Flee Babel, and everything associated with Babel, being idol worship, being mighty ones, being rebellious or rebelling against Yahuah. So this is how Terach and Abram left Babel. We are now going to stop there, and then we will conclude the entire series by summarizing what characterized Babel. These are the things that we need as we are closing, as we are now finishing this series, Flee Babel, that characterizes Babel, and that we must flee from. Shalom.